The great works of gold and precious gems were, for the most part, destroyed as the most beautiful treasures of the decorative arts were taken apart for their gold. The marvelous crests of feathered art were put away, and in time many were ruined and eaten by moths. Before this occurred, there arose a need in Malinali to save, to protect, to prevent a terrible destruction. She didn't know how she would do it, but she felt as if she and all her civilization were in danger of disappearing. And perhaps because of this, she began to value things that before went unnoticed. Her sensibility bloomed, and the beauty and majesty of the city kept her in a state of infatuation. She awoke with the hopes of experiencing it and strolling through it, of crossing it by canoe or on foot, of being in it, with it, for it. She continually sought to be alone so that she could wander through the city as she pleased. The market of Tlatelolco was the place that most lured her. The enormous plaza and the crowd of people exchanging products generated a buzzing sound similar to that of a beehive. The humming of the voices resonated as far as a league away. Many of Cortés's soldiers had been in all parts of the world, in Constantinople, in Italy and Rome, and they said that they had never seen a plaza so large, well-stocked and organized, and so crowded with people. The first time that Malinali went to the market of Tlatelolco was with Cortés, but since she went in her role as the tongue, she was not able to enjoy it. Countless times, her feet wanted to stop before many of the fruit stands to buy one, to eat it and savor it, but she couldn't. She had to follow in the steps of her master. So the following day, taking advantage of a meeting her lord had with his captain, she asked for permission to go out. And it was then that she was able to wander through the market as she pleased, to see, touch, and taste everything. She could not enjoy it enough. She discovered new birds, new fruits, new plants. Everything seduced her, pleased her, stirred her mind. She could not stop imagining what she could create with the feathers and precious metals, the things she could dye with the scarlet cochineals, the things she could sew with those skeins of cotton. In one of the stands, she bartered a cacao seed for a fistful of the longed-for grasshoppers, and she gave free rein to her desires as she strolled through the market of the empire. She gave thanks to the gods for having let her survive the cold of the volcanoes so that she could come to know and enjoy this great city, this memorable market. Here, all sorts of products from every path and region dominated by the Mexicas were exchanged. The merchants who traveled through the commercial routes with their heavy loads inevitably converged on the market of Tlatelolco. Malinali, at that moment, was witness to the great commercial development that had been accomplished during Montezuma's reign. Then, suddenly, Malinali stopped. Her mouth went dry, her stomach turned, and her enjoyment came to a halt. The smell coming from the combination of rabbit fur and quetzal feathers with the smell emitting from plantain leaves, hoja santa, turtle eggs, yuca, sweet potato with honey, and vanilla brought to mind the most sorrowful memory of her childhood, the day her mother had given her away to one of the merchants from Xicalango. Malinali had been sold as a slave, surrounded by aromas very much like this. Her small, terrified body did not dare move. Her large moist eyes fixed on a spot where they sold obsidian knives as she listened to what was being offered for her person from some Mayan merchants who had come to the market of Xicalango to sell pots of honey. It hurt to remember that they offered much more for quetzal feathers than they did for her. That part of her past bothered her so much that she decided to erase it in a single stroke. She made up her mind to paint inside her head a new codex, in which she would be the buyer and not an object for sale. In spite of that disagreeable memory, the market continued to be a favorite place to visit. She only had to avoid the spots where they sold slaves so as not to connect with the memory, and that was that. Tlatelolco was the heart of the empire. Its veins were the commercial routes through which flowed riches and the most varied products, as well as the taxes collected from every province under Mexican control. By all possible means, everything flowed toward the center, towards Tenochtitlan, towards the heart, towards the market of Tlatelolco. That enormous heart registered the pulse of events and was reflected in each and every transaction that took place there. There, Malinali found out that the prices of cotton blankets and huipiles had risen because the Tlaxcaltecans, from the time they had allied themselves with Cortés, had broken all contracts and stopped paying taxes. There, Malinali learned of the indignation of the people, caused not only by the fact that Cortés had been welcomed as a great lord by Montezuma, but that he had been allowed to take over the treasures of the palace of Axayacat without lifting a finger. Cortés and his men had not only taken the treasures of the past governors, but had even pillaged Montezuma's private treasures, including the most beautiful feather works and gold, in the shape of crests, breastplates, bangles, nose rings, anklets, bucklers, crowns, wristbands, and ankle bells. In the courtyards of the palace of Axayacat, the Spaniards ripped the gold from the feather works and melted them into ingots. At the end of the day, the place looked like a hen house where precious birds had been plucked. Feathers floated in the air, bereft of their art. They floated everywhere, along with the dreams of those who had imagined them. Some slaves reverently retrieved them, and the following day took them to the market to sell them as the feathers that had belonged to the crest of Montezuma, of his father Axayacat, or of any other king. The people bought them and treasured them, but in doing so, their indignation grew and grew, just like the price of obsidian knives and arrows. There, in the market, Malinali felt the objection of the proud Tenochans, who could not understand or justify to themselves how the Emperor Montezuma, their great lord, could not control the sickness for gold that afflicted the foreigners. The talk, the whisperings, and the exclamations of anger all rose dramatically in tone on the day that the Spaniards took Montezuma hostage in reprisal for the deaths of 4 of their men at the hands of Cuauhpopocatzin, the lord of Nautlan, who wanted to prove that the foreigners were not gods, that they died like anyone else, but less honorably. That day, obsidian arrows, cudgels, and shields were raised as the people of Tenochtitlan prepared for war. The market as a heart, as a living entity, had a pulse of its own. It slept, awoke, talked, loved, and hated. If it awoke with feelings of war, you could sense it infuriated, vulgar, and violent. If, on the contrary, it awoke in peace, it sounded happy, cheerful, prancing. The change could occur from one day to the next, and from the moment that Cortés overcame Montezuma, the market became a vertiginous play of events. When, in a ceremony, Montezuma swore his obedience to King Charles and accepted his sovereignty over the Mexican people, the market exploded with insults, with cries of rage and pain. When Cortés outlawed human sacrifices and in a violent act climbed to the temple of Huitzilopochtli, confronted the priests who were guarding it, defeated them, and afterwards smashed and shattered the gold mask of the idol with an iron rod, replacing it with an image of the Virgin Mary, the market displayed all the faces of indignation.